Hi, everyone. My name is Blake Eubanks. I'm the Director of Sales here at Spotinst. Let's go ahead and get started. Today, I'd like to introduce Tempa Kunga, our Solutions Architect here at Spotinst. And today, we're going to do a webinar on how to run your Elastic CO on EC2 Spot instances this afternoon. And if you have questions or comments, please let us know and don't hesitate to ask. With that said, Tempa, why don't you get started? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. And thank you, Blake, for that nice intro. So again, my name is Tempa Kunga. I'm a solutions architect for Spotinst. And today for this webinar, we're going to talk about what are Spot instances. I'm not sure if everyone here has used or even has heard of Spot instances. We're going to talk about our service, which we call Elastigroup. Also, I'm going to talk about Elasticsearch running on Spot with our platform. I'm going to go through a quick demo, and we're going to run through our conclusion and also have a quick Q&A session if you guys have any questions after this session. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So first, let's just talk about what a Spot instance is. People have different ideas of of what Spot instances are and how the bidding works on them. So essentially, AWS has a lot of excess capacity, which is totally necessary for them, because if any customer of AWS were to jump on and try to provision a new instance, and then they got some error or saying there's no availability, obviously that's bad news for AWS, and people are probably going to move to some other cloud vendor. So there's always excess capacity in each region, actually each availability zone as well, and then the instance family. So if you have, like, let's say an R3 extra large, that's going to have different capacity versus an M4 extra large, depending also on the availability zone. And then what AWS does is they have this public market. It's kind of like a commodities market. And essentially, they're selling this excess capacity at a huge discount, even up to 80, sometimes even 90% off versus on-demand costs. So you can see that's a huge benefit. But then AWS also has this big downside, being that if they only give you a 2-minute notification prior to terminating. So essentially, you get the rug pulled out from underneath you. And you can see here, this is actually from the EC2 console. Here's a Spot instance pricing history. So you can see this is for, I believe this is for the Oregon region. And this is just for the M4 4 extra large running Linux. And you can see here's the market. You can see the price is kind of spiked and troughed at different times of the day. And for whatever reason, this guy here, the US2B at this particular moment in time, spiked to over, it looks like it's a little over a couple cents over the other availability zone. So even though it's the same exact availability zone, the price is different. Even though it's the same exact instance type, the price is different based on the availability zone. So there's a lot of downsides for using this, and there needs to be management or some kind of scripting or automation in place to ensure that instances are not are kept up and running, and you don't have the rug pulled out from underneath you. And also, if you have any questions or comments, please do post those in the chat. We can address those to you at the end of the session. So Spotinst, our company, is essentially, what we do is we manage the Spot bidding on your behalf. So if you bid too low, that instance that you're bidding on could only last for, let's say, an hour or two. So essentially the bid price, the market price becomes over what you bid. If that ever happens, then you're going to lose that instance within 2 minutes. What we're doing is we're bidding for you on your behalf intelligently. And we actually have insight into each market, kind of like what a hedge fund would have when they're bidding on commodities markets as well, I suppose. So you can see we've actually scored each individual market. So this is Oregon. We have 3 availability zones here. You can see the M4 large is all 91% across the board. The M4 4 extra large, that's 79. We give it a 79% grading in US West 2C. We gave it an 84% and US West 2A, even though it's the same. If anything were to happen, or let's say these markets were to start to degrade, what we would do is automatically provision new instances in a healthy market. So let's say in this region here, or in this type here, M3 large and US West 2C. So we're handling that for you automatically. And also another benefit that you're getting is we're going to ensure that you have availability of 20, 30 minutes prior to an interruption, whereas AWS, like I mentioned earlier, only gives you a 2-minute warning.
Yeah, good point, Tempa. This is Blake. Another point to mention is this spot market has been around in Amazon's network for a while, where you could purchase reserved or on-demand instances, and the spot market has been available. But the real difference here is, as Tempa mentioned, you only get 2 minutes to sort of gracefully degrade your current workload and move it and spin up to another workload without impacting your work. What Spotinst has been able to do is, with our algorithms and how we run our software, we're able to see up to 15 minutes in advance, and then use this spot market scoring tool to preemptively select the next instance type and where we're going to move it to preemptively without ever dropping a production workload in the market today.
Exactly. Thanks. Yeah. So that whole the way we're able to provide 100% uptime is that, let's say you have a cluster size of 10. We see 20, 30 minutes into the future that an instance that you have running on Spot is going to go away. We'll temporarily spin up an additional instance, bringing your cluster size up to 11, and then waiting. There's typically, you can set a draining period after that new instance is healthy, and then after that draining period has elapsed, then we can safely terminate the old instance. In addition to this service, we actually have some additional functionality that you'll see during the demo. And one of these features is called Hot EBS Migration. And what we're doing with Hot EBS Migration is you can allocate a pool of EBS volumes that will automatically and dynamically attach and detach to instances. So let's say, again, we have, in this particular case, I have 3 instances in this Elastigroup cluster. And what's going to happen is, and I'll demonstrate this in a little bit, if an instance is going away, it'll automatically, if we're replacing a spot instance, that instance will preemptively spin up a new instance. That the old instance that's going away, the EBS volume will be detached, and then that EBS volume will be attached to the new instance immediately afterwards, giving you the data durability that you need for your Elasticsearch clusters. And then also we have other functionality that allows you to automatically take AMI snapshots of your EBS volumes as well. So let's talk about this configuration that I have here. In this particular case, I have 4 nodes running. One of those is a master, and I have that configured as an on-demand node. We have cluster routing allocation awareness. So what I'm using is rack ID. And essentially, we have 2 different types of racks that I have configured. One of those is on-demand, and the other is spot, where you'll see none represents the on-demand instance, and spot represents the spot instance. And what I have here below is just some of the user data scripting that I have in place. So you can see the instance ID. I'm using AWS EC2 metadata to get the instance ID. With the instance ID, then I can make a API call to AWS to get the life cycle of that instance, being none or spot, as I mentioned earlier. And then with that information, I'm actually writing to the Elasticsearch configuration file that this instance in particular has a node.rack ID of spot or none. Okay, now with that said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the Spotinst console and show you the Elasticsearch cluster. We're going to see what the Elasticsearch cluster looks like with Spot, and then we're going to try to demonstrate what a spot interruption would look like with Spotinst, and see that we'll have availability even though I'm terminating single instances from the cluster itself. Okay, so now we're in the Spotinst console, as you can see here. Really quickly, I'm just going to show you, we actually have a dashboard here, as you can see. So if you log in for the first time, there's actually a free 2-week trial. The dashboard will provide you some nice information about the cost savings that you have. This is a test account that we have set up. So, but you can actually see that we're saving 80% over on demand across this entire account. We actually have a nice resource map here. As you can see, the resource map will just show you where AWS resources are located in AWS. So if you have, let's say, a new employee that comes in and accidentally starts spinning up instances or buckets in a different region that you're not using, like Singapore, you would see that immediately. You also get some nice widgets, as you can see below, like your EC2 spending, your spot inst usage. You can see if you have reserved instances, you can see your reserved instance utilization here. So if you have any vacant RIs, you actually see the vacant RIs, and we'll actually help you burn through some of those vacant RIs if you haven't. So here you can see these other widgets are kind of self-explanatory. You'll see there's an instance type usage breakdown by instance type. You'll see a breakdown by service. So in this particular case, EC2 is the biggest portion of that, and it's typically 70% of the AWS spend is EC2. And then you also have a nice widget that's showing you spending versus last month. Right. One other thing I want to show you really quick before I jump into my Elasticsearch cluster, we actually have a tool called the Spot Analyzer. And what the Spot Analyzer does, it's going to analyze the existing auto-scaling groups that you have on your AWS account. And it's going to see, if we were to move these auto-scaling groups over to Elastigroup, you could actually save this much monthly. So, this case is a test account, so the numbers are not amazing, but I just wanted to demonstrate that if I click on this existing auto-scaling group, I can click the Start Saving button. And the nice thing about that is it takes me directly to an import wizard. And then the import wizard will actually take all of your auto-scaling, your metadata that you have for your launch config, your auto-scaling group, the scaling policies as well. So all of those things, like even the load balancer, security groups, EMI, all of those types of things will be automatically imported, so you don't have to recreate those. So now I have the list of my Elastic groups. I'm going to go ahead and jump directly into my Elasticsearch Elastic group. And you can see here each Elastic group has its own dashboard, similar to what you saw before. And then what's nice about this is you can actually see at the very top how much you're saving in this case, it's an Elasticsearch cluster. So I'm saving around 84% versus on demand if I were just running this entire Elasticsearch cluster on demand. So you can see here we have an instance count over time. If there's any scaling activities, you'll be able to see what happened at that time. Another thing that's interesting about Elastic Group is you can create a heterogeneous cluster. So you can see here I have in this Elasticsearch cluster, I have M4-2X, R4XL, and R4XL as well here. But you can see actually the allowed types that I have configured are actually even more types here at the top. If I click on here, there's instances. It lists the instances that I have running. You can see the life cycle here as well. And if I click on that instance ID, it'll take me directly to the AWS console. Below, you can see CPU utilization and scaling metrics if you have any as well. Costs, you can see the cluster costs over time. And then there's also a timeline that'll show you different activities that have occurred. Let's say if you had a scaling activity, you would see all those here as well. So now that I've kind of covered the dashboard, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the Elastic Group configuration itself. So here in this case, this Elasticsearch cluster is in Oregon. What I've done is I've actually configured this so that I have 3 instances, like I mentioned, but I want one of those instances to be on demand. So I'll have 1 spot and 2 1 on demand and 2 spot instances running. And then I also have an additional instance that I just spun up via the EC2 console as my master, bringing the total count to 2 on demand and 2 spot instances. And Blake, did you want to quickly go over the scoring for the spot markets?
Sure, sure. Just from a high level, from a business standpoint, we're seeing a lot of CFOs and IT finance personnel that can also log into this dashboard. So it's not just for the DevOps and engineering folks. Um, you can see there's different metrics on here. And by utilizing the spot market scoring tool, it gives you a visual identification of where potentially we would move the instance type and workloads. And as Tempa mentioned, with these being heterogeneous clusters, where you're sort of limited by selecting one on demand or utilizing one reserved instance that you prepaid for a specific instance type. Here, what's Tempest showing is we can select multiple availability zones and then different spot types down below. And by doing this is it gives you a larger pool to choose from, because sometimes when you're used to maybe necessarily using an M3 medium or large for a generic workload, we have you select the different boxes around them in the spot types. And what that does is it provides this spot market scoring tool, because if the M3 medium instance type had spiked, we're going to show you that, hey, there's these other markets available that may necessarily be better for your workload type. They may have a longer availability if you want that workload to run longer. And they also may be cheaper in the long run to run your workload there as well. So by allowing you to do this, it's very flexible in letting you adjust your bidding and strategy capacity with the compute type you're looking for.
Great. And another thing is I'm showing you the Oregon region, which is actually really great for excess capacity. So you can see most of these instances around 80% or higher. I just also wanted to show you, if I pick like what I consider like an outlier instance type, like the G2 8X large, anything GPU is not really mainstream. You can see that there's a different market scoring for these, and like the G2 8X in 2B and 2C in my AWS account are actually rated 0, meaning there's probably next to either no excess capacity or next to nothing in terms of excess capacity. But as you can see, 2A actually has 70%. So what would happen is we would automatically provision new instances somewhere else. Like here we have an R3XL. We would provision those new instances and then eventually terminate the ones that were in these not so great markets, as you can see here.
Yeah, Tempa, will you click on the strategy and capacity button again? So now that you've seen the spot scoring tool, if we go backwards a little bit, you can adjust your bidding strategy. So you see below where it says availability. So if you wanted a specific workload where you said, I want it to run longer, I'm running some sort of batch or database that needs to run for a longer period of time, you could select that. And what the spot market scoring tool will do versus cost is say, I will go out and look in the spot market for instance types that have a longer availability cycle. It could be weeks, it could potentially be months. But if you select cost, the spot scoring tool will change and adjust according to best price available. And then balanced is a blend of both. The other thing you can do is you can see where he has selected fallback to on demand. So we have some customers that just want to run the cheapest workload possible and only in the spot market. But the nice thing about SpotInst for our customers running production workloads is they don't have to worry about those ever being dropped, because what ultimately happens, as Tempa showed, if a spot market becomes unavailable, with our ability to see 15 to 20 minutes in advance, we can then move that workload and we can always move it back to on-demand resources as well without ever dropping that workload. That's how we've been able to launch over 22 million instances successfully to date, is by having this capacity to be able to know and move that workload without ever dropping it. The other thing we can do is utilize your reserved instances. So we have a lot of customers that come to say, we've already made an RI purchase. What we do is we want to utilize those RI instances first because you've already paid for them. The nice thing about SpotInst is we do not charge for our software to run RIs or on-demand resources. The only time SpotInst charges a fee, as Tempa mentioned, is if we act as your bidding partner in the spot market. And then what we can do at the very end is we'll go back to the dashboard and I'll walk you through that as well. Go ahead, Tempa.
Great, thanks so much. One other thing I forgot to mention here is we actually have a scheduling function here. So if you want to set, let's say this is an environment that you only want running Monday through Friday and just completely scale down to 0 on the weekend, you can do that here. You can set the target capacity, and then you just place a cron expression here to indicate that you want 0, or it could even be before a big launch, new application or website launch. Let's say, for example, you want to have excess capacity ready and waiting before it goes live. You can do that as well. Okay, back into here, I've already kind of gone over the spot types and how to configure the heterogeneous clusters. You can see the launch specification looks very similar to the launch config you would have in your auto scaling group. So I have my security groups, the AMI. I'm not using load balancers in this case. I am using an IAM role that I'm using with the SSM tool, the run command tool from AWS to just to kind of simply manage instances that I have running. I'm also using a feature that we have, like I mentioned in the slide, called hot EBS migration. And this is how I have it configured. The first thing that I did was create the EBS volumes from my EC2 console, the 3 of them here, since I have 3 instances in this cluster. And then I've also placed the device type, the mount point for those volumes. And like I mentioned, what will happen is these volumes will automatically be attached and detached to instances as they are replaced. I have a tag here to show that these are my Elastic group, my Elasticsearch nodes. And also you can see the user data that I have placed. So I'll just quickly run through this since I'm doing a few things. So for example, the first thing I'm doing is installing the SSM agent. This is to run commands directly from the EC2 console, like stop and start the Elasticsearch service, which I was mainly using it for. The instance ID, I'm saving that to a variable. I'm also using the AWS CLI to get the rack lifecycle for each instance, being none or spot, where none represents on demand. Also, you can see that I'm mounting that EBS volume that we have defined up here, and I'm mounting that to media Elasticsearch volume. Going down, also what we have going is the, let's see, I also installed the Cloud AWS plugin for Elasticsearch, which I did not use in this case. Let's see, we have down here. Also, what you can see I'm doing here is modifying the Elasticsearch configuration files, placing in things like so this is the base AMI from AWS, so nothing was pre-installed in the AMI. This is fully bootstrapped, but essentially I've installed Elasticsearch. I'm modifying the configuration file to say that this is the cluster name, this is the host that I had, the master node that I had configured on demand. Also, I'm doing things like writing in the node.rack ID, and then ensuring that the rack ID is being used for the allocation, the cluster routing allocation awareness, to ensure that different racks, that the sharding and replicas are spread across the racks to ensure that there's no single point of failure based on the rack at least. Below here, what you'll see is the integrations that we have. So this is not being used in any way right now for this particular case, but if you're using containers, Elastic Beanstalk, the Kubernetes Rancher, Mesosphere, these all work with the container scheduler, being that what we'll do is make an API call to ensure that instances that are going away are automatically drained, and new instances are added to compensate for instances going away. So the scheduler will automatically move Docker images over to new instances that are not in draining mode. Scaling policies, I don't have any configured here, but certainly just like you would in an auto scaling group, you can define those. Like we can have CPU utilization 90% for 5 minutes, and then spin up an additional server if you like, just like you would. And if you're doing the auto scaling group import, that would also be auto-populated here for you. And then the very last page, you have the entire configuration. So you can see, so everything here it's just a JSON body. With our platform, with Elastic Group, we're API first. So you could either hit the update button and this will just run against the API, or you can hit export and modify this JSON body and then run this script later if you like. Okay, so we've gone over the demo. Let's go ahead and jump into our Elasticsearch master node. So a couple things I wanted to pop up here. So let's do this first. I just wanted to get the cluster health. So this is 4 nodes, as I mentioned. I did configure an index already from the Elasticsearch website with an example that they had. So you can see I have 4 data nodes. It's currently green, and there's 10 active shards. So let's go ahead and take a look at the nodes themselves. So you can see Grim Hunter here, ending in 6.7, which I'm logged into currently, is my master node, and I have 4 nodes total. And as I mentioned earlier, we're using rack ID with cluster allocation awareness. So you can see rack ID is none. This is an on-demand instance. This is a spot instance. This is a on-demand. And then the last one is spot. So you can see I have 2, 2, and 2. Here's my index. It's a bank with 100 records. And then I'll show you the shards that we have here. So we have the shards. So you can see we have the primary and the replica shards spread out across the different racks. So great. So now this is up and running. Everything is healthy. So let's try to break it. Let's see what happens if we were to, let's say, a spot interruption or replacement were to occur. I can simulate that here directly from our console. So what I'll do is, so you see I have 2 spot and a single on demand. What I'll do is I'll just detach this. And what this will do is it will spin up a new instance, and it will terminate this instance here. So we're going to be doing a replacement. So my apologies, I should have had this, should have started that a little while ago so that we didn't have to wait for it, but let's just go ahead and see what's going on. Let's look at the cluster health. So we have 4 nodes there. And as you can see from the console, it's just pending evaluation. And also, while we're waiting for it, we can see from my EC2 console and my AWS account, it's launching a new instance here. And this is what would automatically happen if we detected with our algorithm that an instance is going to go away in the next 20 or 30 minutes. And one thing I think also I did not mention was that with SpotInst, we're not really the ideal timeline that we have for single spot instances. Their longevity would be around 2 weeks, but it's actually fairly easy. It's totally possible to have instances running on spot for months at a time. So 2, 3, sometimes even 4 months running on spot. And that is actually up to the way that you have that configured. So if you go to Elastigroup and the configuration that I showed you previously under the strategy of availability. So here, availability, you would have the longevity of months, whereas cost, you would actually have, maybe you would have replacements happen 2 or 3 times a day, but you would have the best cost. So maybe with availability, you're saving, instead of 85%, maybe you're saving 75%. And with cost, you're definitely going to hit that upper barrier on the total cost savings. And then, of course, there's balance, which would be the in between, and that's actually the default configuration. So let's go ahead and go back down here. So you can see the status went down to yellow. A new node was added, but you can see here that there's 2 unassigned shards. Let's take a look at the shards. See there, 2 of those replica shards are not assigned. And as soon as this new instance is up and running, as soon as that new instance is up and healthy, we should see those shards come live right away. There we go. So the other instance has gone away, and you can see this new instance is initializing right now. While we're waiting for that, maybe it's a good time to take any questions that anyone here in the chat might have.
Not Tempa, if you pull up the dashboard, I can walk through that.
Oh, okay, of course.
So thank you. So on the dashboard, the nice thing about this UI is we also use it as a financial tool. And the way Spotinst works, as I mentioned, we don't charge for on-demand or reserved instances. As you can see in this example, you see 5 running spots, the hours, the potential costs. So what potential cost means is that's the published AWS on-demand price of what you would pay for running those 5 spots in their marketplace today. The actual cost of $63 is what you would be paying because you decided to run in the spot market using the Spotinst software. That shows a savings of 80%, which is pretty typical of our customer base of over 500 customers. So you see the total amount saved of $253.03. What Spotinst does is we typically take a piece of the savings you achieve in the market and bill you on a monthly basis. So you can see from the dashboard, it's pretty intuitive and easy to see. The other thing I'd like to mention, just as a value-added feature, Tempo, while we're waiting, is the optimizer tool. And if you can click on that, what it shows is some information about the specific spots you're running in the marketplace. And it provides some feedback and information to somebody that's responsible as a budget holder for running these workloads. And once this loads, I'll walk you through that.
You know what? I believe the test account doesn't have any data for that.
Oh, okay.
No, by design. Let me just switch over to a different account really quick.
Sure. So what the optimizer tool does is think of it as a deck of cards, which each instance type you have running. And what it's going out doing through the AWS console is it's pulling all of the information. Here we go. So think of these as a deck of cards. And what it's showing you is the instance type, the size. If it's on demand, it's showing the CPU utilization, where the location is, where it's running. You can see that's in USD 1C. And so we have a lot of customers utilizing this tool because it gives a visual orientation of where some of the money's being spent and where some of the money's being wasted. So if you're not actually need an M4 extra large on-demand resource for this type of workload, you can go ahead and resize it by clicking on that button and maybe move it to a smaller instance type. Or you could actually terminate it and say, you know what, we're not even using that anymore. And what this does is it provides visibility and accounting into more about cloud cost optimization. All right. Very good.
Okay, so you can, sorry, thank you for that, Blake.
No problem.
See here, we have those instances that, so we replaced one of those instances, simulating a spot replacement by the Elasticsearch platform. You can see that all the shards previously were, 2 of those, it looks like were unassigned, and you can see that now it's back to normal, and we should now see the cluster health back to green. So one more extreme case that I wanted to show, because I did show you yellow, which, you know, that's pretty straightforward and easy to show, easy to fail back from. But I also wanted to show you, and I hope the demo gods are with me today, how you can use Elastigroup with our hot EBS migration functionality to come back from a catastrophic failure being red, right? So let me switch over, apologize, just one moment. Excuse me. Okay, so I'm going back into my Elasticsearch cluster here. And what I'm going to do is now just go into the capacity and just manually change this to 0. So now I'm going from a cluster size of 4 all the way down to 1 by doing this. So let's go ahead and see what kind of havoc this is causing on our cluster, and this should update pretty quickly. I apologize. Well, I'm still waiting for this. Blake, do you want to go over the new radius feature that we have coming out?
Sure, we can talk about both of them. What Radius is Spotinst is launching a new RDS service, which we're calling Radius. And basically the premise behind it is utilizing Spot resources. So previously, a lot of our customers have said they've dedicated RIs and on-demand resources for their RDS portfolio within Amazon. But Amazon currently has them running those resources with on-demand resources or RIs, and typically charges a monthly fee. So one of the things that Spotinst has done is said, you know, you don't necessarily need to run those slave servers in on demand and pay that much higher price. We're now able to offer this service where you can run RDS in the spot market with the slave servers at a much more discounted cost, and as well as no monthly fee. So that service is being betaed right now, and we'll be launching it hopefully before the end of Q1. The other tool I'll mention while Tempa's pulling this up is under load balancers. We have our own load balancer called Multi that we're also launching in Q1, which is a layer 7 software-based load balancer that can sit above any cloud. And we'll also be offering that at a highly, you know, about half the cost of what some of our customers are currently paying today, with no monthly fee as well. So there'll be more information posted. There's also some links on our website that you can click on to get more information about Multi and our Radius product as well. There's a question from the audience from Neil. Thank you. Does Microsoft plan to do their own version of Spot? They do not offer that today. We are currently working with the Azure team, and we're hoping within the Q1, Q2 timeframe to help them develop their own version of a spot market in the future. So that's a great question. We currently support, as you can see, AWS today. We support the Google Cloud Platform. We've also done a deal with Packet.net to support bare metal x86 servers with them as well. And then we have some other customers looking at private cloud adoption, creating spot markets there in the future as well. Thank you for the question.
Okay, sorry about the delay here. You can see, so I updated, what I did previously is I updated the Elastigroup capacity down to 0. And now it's finally shutting down those 3 instances, basically bringing my cluster completely down to 1 instance, which is that one single on-demand instance that are configured originally. So those instances are coming down. Now we should, if I go back to the shards, you can see, you know, we have a lot of unassigned shards, and we should now also see a cluster status of red. You know, without the hot EBS migration feature that I showed you earlier, this could be, you know, catastrophic. But essentially, what we're doing is we are terminating those instances on your behalf, those spot instances, but we are keeping those EBS volumes live. So if you look in the EC2 console, they'll just show up as unattached EBS volumes. And then now that those are down and terminated, I can go here. And again, thank you for your patience here. What I'll do now, no instances running, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and change this capacity to 3. Which should again launch another 2 spot instances and 1 single on-demand instance, bringing my Elasticsearch cluster up to 4, back to normal. And please, if while we're waiting here for another couple minutes, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter those into the Zoom webinar chat. And what I'm going to do also, since we're kind of getting close to the end, is see if I can. Oh no, I can't. Let's see. It looks like I cannot make the microphones. Okay, sorry, I was trying to unmute the participant microphones. I don't think I can, unfortunately. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on here in the EC2 console again. So we have another 3 instances launching, and just like I mentioned earlier, we have 2 spot and 1 on demand. And again, this is another this is a heterogeneous cluster for Elasticsearch, R4XL and an M4-2XL and an M4XL. And one question that comes up quite often is why is it so diversified? So with my particular Elastic group, with my Elasticsearch cluster, I've predetermined that I need to have a minimum of 16 gigabytes of memory, and I haven't made any other vCPU or other kind of counts. I'm not using any ephemeral volume, so I've kind of restricted it to just the memory limitation, and I've went ahead and diversified it based on instances that had that minimum memory limitation, and I went up a couple sizes as well, so all the way up to 2XL on the M4s. So right now we're trying to kill it, and we'll get back to that in a minute. So I just wanted to quickly recap for this webinar. Again, thank you everyone for attending today. So you can save 80, even 85% versus EC2 on demand for the exact same instance type. And we can also provide longevity of not just hours or weeks, but even months, depending on the policy that you have configured. Like I said, if you want those instances, the spot instances to run for 2 or 3 months at a time, maybe instead of saving 80, 85%, you're saving 75%, or between 70 and 75%. But that's still pretty significant in terms of saving, and better than what you could do versus on demand, and you still also get the great longevity of that.
Sure. Tempa, one of the other things I'd like to say is we also offer a free 14-day trial. So Tempa and I all offer our customers any support needed to get up and running. So we can provide you a demo via Zoom video and actually help you log into your own console, get the software set up. And we're pretty confident if you're running auto-scaling groups or Elastic Beanstalk where you have some workloads to migrate over, we could have you up and running in 30 minutes or less. And then you'd start to see some of the calculated savings within your infrastructure for yourself.
Also, you can get a blend of on-demand, spot, reserve. Like I mentioned earlier, if you have reserved instances, we'll burn through those first. And actually, we don't even charge for provisioning reserved instances. We only, our charge is very simple. So if you're saving money using spot with Elastic Group, that's the only time that would ever happen. You get heterogeneous clusters, like I showed you previously, so you can blend the instance types, the sizes. You can have your own, what are your minimum requirements, and then pick from there. Is it CPU limited? Is it memory limited? Do you need to have ephemeral volumes? Whatever that may be, or GPUs, for example, a minimum number of GPU. You can configure it that way as well. You get incredible cluster availability utilizing cluster allocation awareness if you're using Elasticsearch, like I demonstrated earlier, using racks. And it's very straightforward. That the user data, the script that I had there was not too crazy. Wasn't like a thing you multiple KB to download. It's very straightforward. You get incredible data durability, which I'll show you as soon as this cluster's back up. So where we left off, that cluster status was down to red. So with hot ABS migration, we can mitigate that, and you can see with this platform, there's some great benefits of using that. You can also, on top of using the hot EBS migration, you can actually also automate your EBS, those EBS volumes, your data volumes with automated snapshots. And then we also have a simple fee structure. Did you already go over the fee structure, Blake?
Yes, briefly, but just to recap, what we do is we take the published on-demand prices available on their website for on-demand resources, and then we calculate the savings based on the actual instance type and workload rerun in the spot market. You'll get a savings calculation. And what we do is we take a percentage of the amount you save every month, and then we bill you on a monthly basis that fee. And as Tempa mentioned, we see typical customers. We have over 500 customers today, and on average, they are saving over 78.6% in total.
Perfect. So let me just jump back in to, so we can, as you can see here, where we left off, I terminated the Elastic group cluster that I had. So 3 of the 4 instances in this cluster were terminated. We now have we previously had a cluster status of red. And now you can see with the hot EBS migration, those EBS volumes that were attached to those previously terminated instances were automatically attached to the new instances that were launched. And now I have, again, a status of green. I have my 4 nodes back. My active shards are no reallocating or initializing or unassigned shards whatsoever. And if I go into the shards, every single shard is allocated as they should be. And that concludes the demo. So if you have any questions, please do let us know. And we only had 1 question so far. But I also wanted to point this out that, we have people that are we have partners, with senior DevOps people like Phil Christensen over at LogicWorks. And, these people have vetted our platform, and they're using, they're familiar with auto-scaling groups and load balanced applications. And as Phil says, it's kind of a no-brainer. If you've already done the work to make your applications portable and horizontally scalable, you should at least attempt to set up a cluster just to see what kind of cost savings you're going to see, and also how it behaves in the face of some sort of spot interruption. So it's very straightforward. And as I showed you guys earlier, the import wizard for that is also very straightforward. And if you want to sign up for a 2-week free trial, please just go to spotinst.com/signup, as you can see here. You get a free 2-week trial. Blake and I would be very happy to help you with setting up your first Elastic groups with our platform.
Thanks everybody for coming this afternoon. And additional information about some of those new services I mentioned will be posted on our website at spotinst.com.